Hey guys, it's Enigma Hood. So I've been thinking more and more about objective morality, and was thinking about the reason why I was thinking about it so much was I got into an argument with one of my friends about Abraham Lincoln, and somehow Abraham Lincoln got brought up. I think it had to do with some kind of realistic recreation of this bastard, and I said I don't really feel like looking at immoral people. And he was like, well, what are you talking about? Abraham Lincoln's a fucking hero. I'm like, no, he's not. He was immoral. He was a racist. And he was basically trying to argue for subjective morality and say how at the time what he was doing was acceptable and it was okay. I say that's bullshit. That's bullshit. That is pure bullshit. It was wrong back then. It was wrong 100,000 years ago. It's wrong now. It'll be wrong 100,000 years from now. Now you might be saying, Enigma Hood, aren't you contradicting what you said before? Aren't you kinda backpedaling on your position about morality? And maybe that might be true. Actually, that might actually be true. I'm not like a Christian which has to adhere to only one viewpoint or one philosophy and never ever change my views as time goes on and I reevaluate other opinions, other evidence, and things like that. I have to do that. That's the whole point of being an open-minded, intellectually honest human being. You look at the other viewpoints, you consider the evidence and the arguments, and then you reevaluate your own position. And in this case, I thought about it. And I realized that the objective of morality, whenever we're talking about morality, we're always talking about improving the well-being of humankind. We're always talking about, is this in the best interest to our species as a whole? That's always what we're talking about. It's never about anything else other than that. And that doesn't necessarily mean it can't have other goals. I do think that morality can also encompass not just improving the well-being of our species, but it can also, underneath that, which would be not quite as important as the primary goal, but you can also have improving the well-being of other animals. And then underneath that, you can have improving the well-being of all life. And then these will have corresponding levels of importance that have to be weighed and considered as such. But typically, broadly speaking, we're always talking about that. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about morality now, or if we're talking about morality in the future, or if we're talking about morality 200 years ago, or 300 years ago, or 500 years ago. It's always the same thing. We're always making an assessment about whether or not this moral dilemma, if we're trying to evaluate that, we're trying to assess whether or not this decision acts in the best interest to humanity, is improving the well-being of humanity. Now, with that said, actions can vary. They can vary. So if I were to ask you, is killing moral? You would say it depends on the circumstances. And I would agree completely. The actions that we undertake can change depending on the situation, depending on the time, depending on the context, etc. So killing, if you just go around killing for no good reason, I would say that's immoral. But then just the other day, some guy brought up the fact that the African National Congress, the ANC, for those of you who aren't too familiar with, in South Africa, they were a political party, but they were referred to by the white South African government as terrorists, and they did commit violence. However, I would make the contention that their violence was necessary in bringing about an end to something that was inherently, fundamentally immoral, apartheid. So in that situation, that is the moral decision to do. They had to use violence in order to help dismantle apartheid as soon as possible. If you want a more clear-cut case, if you are morally ambiguous about that because you have biases, like maybe you are white and sympathize more with the white South Africans, and inevitably in these kinds of political conflicts, that happens. That's called tribalism. I'll get to that later. A more clear-cut case is if somebody's trying to kill you, you're justified in killing them. That is a moral decision to make. You have the right to live. You don't have to just let some idiot kill you just because he feels like it. He's acting immorally. You are morally justified in defending yourself. So the actions, the point I'm making is the actions can change, but the goal always remains the same. And Abraham Lincoln in that time, it doesn't really matter. He was acting tribalistic. He did not give a flying fuck about the blacks. He did not care about freeing the blacks. He did not care about giving blacks equal rights. He did not care about them at all. He only cared about improving the well-being of white Americans. And that's why he's immoral. That's why he was immoral back then, and that's why he's immoral right now. He's tribalistic. Now you might be saying that lots of people are tribalistic. Of course they are. America is the biggest agent that acts tribalistic. And whenever America does and it goes about foreign policy and in its endeavors, it's always acting in the best interest to itself, to America. It's never thinking about humanity as a whole. Why do you think America supports Israel? Is that some kind of moral position? Is that the moral position to make, to support Israel but not Palestine? How is that moral? How is that moral? That's not moral. The reason why America supports Israel is it's because it's doing it in its own best interest. It feels that support of Israel is necessary to advance America's goals, its own best interest. I would contend, to go off on a little sidetrack here, I would contend that it didn't help America because American support for Israel was what directly led to 9/11, but that's a different story. Anyway, the point is that Abraham Lincoln was a bigot. He was a racist. And it has nothing to do with subjectivity or moral relativism. What he was doing was wrong back then, and it's still wrong. And to look fondly upon him and think of him as a hero, I think is dishonest and disingenuous, especially for people who should know better. He was a scumbag. He was an immoral scumbag. He didn't give a damn about the advancement of blacks or colored people, as he would refer to them as. And you think for a second that he would support Obama as president irrespective of his skin color, a superficial difference? Nope. We need to grow beyond this kind of petty bullshit. And that's why I'm all in favor for things like genetic engineering and human transcendence. I really do think that these things will bring about the end of racism. But that's a different topic. I have talked about it before, and maybe I'll talk about it again in the future. This is Enigma Hood signing off.